Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome once again back to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall. This is my co host, Bill McIntyre. As we state, we're just two guys discussing the issues of the day, laying out the facts of those issues, giving you our opinion and our viewpoints on those issues and those facts. We'd love it here at the We Are Marshall podcast if you would go to all of our social media and share it all over yours and all over the social media stratosphere. You can like and share our podcast episodes at YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and our channel, our full channel, is on an application called Rumble. It's a free speech application similar to YouTube, and it is a free download. Download that and then look up the We Are Marshall podcast, and you'll see our season episodes from last year, season 1, and this year, season 2. This here is episode 15 of season 2. We'd love it if you would go check out our sponsorship. We've got Local Prints New Hampshire out of Hampstead, New Hampshire, a full-service screen printing company. You can go to our website at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com and click on the link on the top left to go directly to Local Prints New Hampshire. Check them out, support them as they have supported us, and also check out our large sponsor, MateConnector.com, a large dating website with all the bells and whistles of the big players in the market today, but for a much less inexpensive price. So if you have any questions or issues during this podcast or any time, if you go to the website, there is a chat there that you can try to chat with us on this podcast. And you can send email to me, Steve, at wearemarshallpodcast.com. And you can also reach Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com. We'd love for you to go to the website, as I stated earlier, at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com, and you can check out the culmination of projects that Bill and I are working on. Near Bill's bio, there is a link to go to his blog and check out all his blogs and everything he's writing about there. And also you can go to Amazon and check out Vella, Vella, and it's a short story episodic writing little thing that they're doing, and Bill writes some stories there. Go check those out. And also go check out on Amazon my two books that are up there. This one, The Unforeseen Enemy and The Perception Therapist. They are both for sale currently on Amazon. So do check those out. Support us. And we'll jump right into everything here after all that. At the We Are Marshall podcast, we've got lots to cover here. A couple shameless plugs, but we will continue. So Biden uses feisty State of the Union to contrast with Trump, sell voters on his second term. So President Joe Biden delivered a defiant argument for a second term in his State of the Union speech Thursday night, lacing into GOP frontrunner Donald Trump for espousing resentment, revenge, and retribution, and for jeopardizing freedom at home and abroad. Reveling in the political moment, Biden fired multiple broadsides at my predecessor without ever mentioning Trump by name, 13 times in all, raising his voice repeatedly as he worked to quell voter concerns about his age and job performance while sharpening the contrast with his all but certain November rival. The scrappy tone from Biden was a sharp break from his often humdrum daily appearances and was intended to banish doubts about whether the 81-year-old president, the country's oldest ever, is still up to the job. For 68 minutes in the House chamber, Biden goaded Republicans over their policies on immigration, taxes, and more, invited call and response banter from fellow Democrats, and seemed to relish the fight. I know I may not look like it, but I've been around a while, Biden deadpanned. And when you get to my age, certain things become clearer than ever before. Noting he was born during World War II and came of political age during the upheaval of the 1960s, Biden declared, "My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy, a future based on the core values that have defined America: honesty, decency, dignity, equality, to respect everyone, to give everyone a fair shot, to give hate no safe harbor. Now, some other people my age see a different story, an American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution. That's not me." The president linked Trump's praise for those who overran the Capitol in an attempt to subvert the 2020 election with anti-democratic threats abroad. Freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Biden said as he appealed for Congress to support Ukraine's efforts to defend itself against Russia's 2-year-old invasion. History is watching. Biden directly referenced the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the Capitol, calling out those who have played it down. My predecessor, and some of you here, seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that, Biden said. This is a moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's a simple truth. You cannot love your country only when you win. The State of the Union addresses the marquee night on the White House calendar, offering presidents a direct line to a captive audience of lawmakers and dignitaries in the House chamber and tens of million viewers at home. Almost certain to be Biden's largest audience of the year, Biden knew he would be watched not just for his message, but for whether he could deliver it with vigor and command. Aide said Biden was aiming to prove his doubters wrong by flashing his combative side and trying to needle Republicans over positions he believes are out of step with the country, particularly on access to abortion, but also tax policy and health care, taking a victory lap and selling his legislative accomplishments, including funding to bolster manufacturing of computer chips nationwide. Biden veered from his prepared script to take a dig at Republicans who voted against such policies, but nonetheless take credit for them back home. If any of you don't want that money in your districts, Biden said, just let me know. The president was speaking before a historically ineffective Congress. In the GOP-led House, Speaker Mike Johnson took power 5 months ago after the chaotic ouster of former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Legislators are still struggling to approve funding bills for the current year and have been deadlocked for months on foreign assistance bills to help Ukraine stave off Russia's invasion and to support Israel's fight against Hamas. Johnson urged Republicans in a private meeting Wednesday to show decorum during the speech, but he appeared to have limited success. A number of House Republicans began to stand up and leave the chamber as Biden discussed raising taxes on billionaires and corporations. Others remained in their chairs and shook their heads while Johnson didn't disguise his emotions, raising his eyebrows and occasionally rolling his eyes. Biden engaged in a loud call and response with lawmakers as he rhetorically questioned whether the tax code was fair and whether billionaires and corporations need another $2 trillion in tax breaks as he charged Republicans want. Biden also highlighted his efforts to fight shrinkflation, companies putting fewer pretzels in the jar and less yogurt in sealed cups, and so-called junk fees on services. Neither is a prime driver of inflation, but the White House hoped to show consumers that Biden is fighting for them. Congressional Republican leaders showcased one of the newest lawmakers through the State of the Union rebuttal, hoping to make a generational contrast with Biden. Alabama Senator Katie Britt, the youngest Republican woman elected to the Senate, painted a picture of a nation that seemed to be slipping away and one where our families are hurting. Right now, our commander-in-chief is not in command. The free world deserves better than a dithering and diminished leader, Britt said. Speaking deliberately in an address from her home kitchen, America deserves leaders who recognize that secure borders, stable prices, safe streets, and a strong defense are the cornerstones of a great nation. Biden, by contrast, insisted the State of the Union was strong and getting stronger. Trump responded to the speech in real time on his Truth Social site, defending himself and blasting Biden for what he said may be the angriest, least compassionate, and worst State of the Union speech ever made. It was an embarrassment to our country. This year, Biden faced heightened emotions, particularly among his base supporters over his staunch backing for Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza. Biden had initially hoped a short-term ceasefire would be in place by the speech to allow for the release of more hostages and surge sorely needed aid into the territory. The White House blamed Hamas for not yet accepting a deal brokered by U.S. and its allies. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza and ensure that humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire, Biden said, delivering a warning that Israel should not use aid as a bargaining chip with Hamas, even as he reaffirmed Israel's right to defend itself from attacks by the militant group. A slew of Democrats and Republicans wore pins and stickers in honor of the Israeli hostages still being held captive in Gaza. Meanwhile, several House progressives wore Palestinian keffiyehs, the black and white checkered scarves that have come to symbolize Palestinian solidarity, Heading to the address, Biden's motorcade took a circuitous route to the Capitol as hundreds of pro-ceasefire demonstrators tried to disrupt its path from the White House. Immigration was another flashpoint during the night. The GOP-controlled House was refused to act on a Senate-passed version of the aid legislation insisting on new, stiffer measures to limit migration at the U.S.-Mexico border. After Trump used his influence to help sink a bipartisan compromise that would have done just that, as Biden ran through the endorsements by conservative groups of the legislation, some in the audience appeared to yell and interject, and Biden shot back, I know you know how to read, as Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, wearing pro-Trump paraphernalia, continued to shout at Biden. The president held up a white button that the Georgia Republican had handed him earlier, bearing the name of the slain Laken Riley. Authorities say the Georgia nursing student was killed by a Venezuelan national who unlawfully crossed into the U.S. in September 2022. Laken Riley, Biden said. Let me correct that. He actually didn't say Laken Riley. He said Lincoln Riley. So he got the name wrong. Lincoln Riley is a coach. I believe he's coaching USC football at this time. But it's Laken Riley. Let's repeat that. Laken Riley. Biden said calling her an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. He expressed condolences to her family, saying his heart goes out to them. And it was a big mistake for him in front of his Democratic colleagues to call that Venezuelan illegal. Trust me. We will discuss that. Access to abortion and fertility treatments was also a key component of Biden's speech, especially in light of a controversial ruling from Alabama's Supreme Court that has upended access to in vitro fertilization treatment in the state. To my friends across the aisle, don't keep families waiting any longer, Biden said, recognizing LaToya Beasley, a guest of First Lady Jill Biden's, whose IVF treatments were canceled after the Alabama ruling. Guarantee the right to IVF nationwide. Another guest was Kate Cox, who sued Texas and ultimately left her home state to obtain an emergency abortion after a severe fetal anomaly was detected in a case that drew national attention. Now, when you look at this, we look at these State of the Unions. These things are all pomp and circumstance and kissing this one's butt and patting this one's back. It's all a bunch of ridiculousness, in my opinion, okay? We should have someone else, never the person in charge, state how his accomplishments are going. We should actually have a nonpartisan individual, group, or entity be telling us what the State of the Union is. That way, we can truly look forward to what this president has done and what he's going to do. Now, as far as the illegal comment, that to me was amazing. It was a Democrat finally saying the truth. And it was the leader of the Democratic Party, the President of the United States. He finally acknowledged that that was an illegal alien that came over the border illegally and killed someone. Okay, and then he got all screwed up, and this one's killing this one, and this one. He got really screwed up. So all I have to say is he looked weak. They say he looked feisty and fiery. Yeah, he was kind of yelling at us and giving us some of his little anger that he supposedly has here, but I don't think this guy cares about anything but himself. So what do you think about it, Bill?
I have a lot of takeaways, Steve, and I think we're going to agree on almost everything here. But I guess I just wanted to touch on, in no particular order, the illegal comment was a slip, okay? I watched that. I didn't catch it all. I was in and out, but he actually did say that. I watched MTG call him out. I watched her say her name, and I'm a little politically angry about the immigration thing, so I normally don't do this. I don't want to use the word in favor, but I wasn't as outraged by the lack of decorum in a kind of a sacred hall and a revered American institution as the State of the Union is. The bad behavior usually sends me into a tailspin of, annoyance, but I think he did need to say her name, and I think the illegal thing was a slip, and I don't know if you're going to cover it in a future segment, so I'll leave that until the end maybe, but there's been a brouhaha today about him backpedaling on using the word illegal. So, like I said, I don't want to rain on your parade at all. But the State of the Union is largely bullshit in a lot of ways because, like you said, Steve, yes, it is the leader of the United States giving a speech that was composed by his advisors, translated it and made look pretty by a speechwriter. And all the president had to do was deliver it. And that actually proved to be his challenge, because his speechwriters and advisors had been running his presidency from day one, okay, and as well as Barack Obama, probably from some basement somewhere. What we have here is you have the guy, his only challenge was not to look like a brain dead dope, which he's come across on so many occasions. And I'm not being cruel. The fact is he's come across as completely squinty-eyed and lethargic and mumbling. So I don't know what they gave him for meds. Maybe he took a whole bunch of no-dose or some ADHD medications or what. But he was definitely pumped up on something. And he went out there to deliver anything but a State of the Union speech. He delivered a campaign speech, which is highly inappropriate for a State of the Union. He delivered an angry speech. He yelled as if he wasn't aware that he had a microphone. He was antagonistic. He was, there's an older adage that says you don't mention your competition. He mentioned his competition, 9 times?
13 times.
13 times, yeah. People know what your predecessor means. It means, Trump. Now, at what point do you stop blaming Trump for your problems? He's almost into his 4th year of his presidency. At what point do you stop blaming the previous administration, So I have a lot of takeaways from this. One thing you said, though, that interests me is when he did that shrinkflation thing, because he's done this before. He comments on the economy is bad when the fund size Snickers is so small or whatever. Well, the fact is that shrinkflation is not a driver of inflation. It's an indication of inflation, okay? It's because everything is so expensive that companies are forced to give you less product for the same money. Orange juice makers were criticized recently for decreasing the size of the portion but charging the same price. Well, it's a real thing. I saw a thing the other day online about a restaurant owner who posted 3 categories of in which his costs have gone up. One of them was takeout containers. That a year previous to when he made this post, takeout containers were $24 for a package of whatever 90. Now they're $95. Okay, chicken wings were $25 a case. Now they're $85 a case.
Well, those are plastic containers, right?
Yeah, but then chicken wings.
Price of oil went up. Price of oil goes up.
Yeah.
They go up. These are things people don't understand. If you didn't know this, believe it or not, many of you may not, plastic comes from oil.
Yep.
So if oil prices go up, anything made with plastic goes up.
Yep. And one other item wasn't important, but the important was the difference in the cost to the owner. And he said, when we raise our prices, we're not trying to profit off of you. We're simply trying to maintain our business. And this is what inflation does. And inflation is a direct result of overspending. And this administration has been overspending without any real strategy for so long that inflation is out of control. And of course, the numbers he gave are misleading. Again, just like we talked about last week, 3%. No, it's not 3%. It's a 3% adjustment over the last high number, which at one point was 20%.
Exactly.
So like this is all reading between the lines. And yeah, I'm going to come across as a contrarian because I'm not a fan of Joe Biden. But I mean, I try to look at this objectively. And I saw the same thing you did, Steve. I saw a lot of self-aggrandizing, a lot of, he was factually incorrect on a lot of things. And I have a list. I'm not going to do it to you right now. Maybe in a second segment, if it allows, I'll interject them. But there's a lot. I'm sorry.
There's the cheap gas station up the street that I go to all the time. 10 cent increase in one day. I mean, to me, I don't look at that like it's a lot because, we're in a better place than some people.
Sure.
Because if you really think about it, if you take 20, let's say 10 cents is raised and you got a 20-gallon tank. I mean, you only raised filling your tank up $2. Okay.
Right.
I'm not going to belittle that to someone that's got to fill their tank up every day. Okay.
Right.
Now that becomes $10 to $14 a week. Then it becomes so much a month. It starts to add up. But at 10 cents isn't that incredibly bad, but it's still not right, and gas prices should be much lower than they are. But I don't want to continue this because we got another segment on this. I want to jump right into Bill. He's got something in regards to this as well. We're covering this topic well. you all should know as much as possible about what transpired with Joe Biden and the State of the Union. So we're going to hand it over Bill here at the We Are Marshall podcast for his first segment today. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Steve. I want to talk about some things that I think that we think you should know about, and that's why we're doing this podcast. If you don't agree, then tell us. The State of the Union, to me, I was looking for remarks on Israel because there are two issues that are plaguing Joe Biden, and his total intent of this speech was to rally a political backing in a what is appearing to be a failed campaign. And this was, like I said, his State of the Union was just a barely disguised political speech. All right, so he's got immigration, he's got Israel that are killing him right now. Okay, members of his party are calling for all kinds of reforms on policy with Israel. And Joe's in a tough spot because he's not going to be the one to reverse his 75, 80 years of U.S. policy towards Israel. He's not going to do that. So he's in a tough place with the situation, and he's being called upon to do things. So everything he said, reading between the lines regarding Israel and Hamas, was critical. So I want to talk about that, okay? So his remarks on Israel, followed by a hot mic moment, which I'll get into, they signal a shift in policy towards Middle East conflict. It appears that Biden's posture towards Israel is growing a little more confrontational, a little impatient, a little hurried, and frankly, it's not going in the right direction. He's putting him at odds with Israel, who has been, disagree or agree, I mean, like or not like, but you can't disagree with it, a staunch ally of the United States for as many years as they've been around. So in the address, he really walked the line on Israel and Gaza, okay? He's facing heavy backlash from the left supporting Israel as the death toll in Gaza rises. He's acknowledged their concerns in the address. He says Israel has an added burden because Hamas hides and operates among the civilian population like cowards. True. Under hospitals, daycare centers, and all the like. There's also a fundamental responsibility, though, to protect innocent civilians in Gaza. 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of them are not Hamas, he said, adding that their ministers, women and children, girls and boys, while many more are without food and medicine. It's heartbreaking, okay? And for the sake of fact-checking, it is, all right? Post-address, though, was where the real interesting thing came about. As he made his round, shaking hands and patting himself on the back, he was caught on a hot mic, quotation fingers, discussing wanting a come-to-Jesus meeting with the Israeli prime minister. He was recorded while speaking on the floor of the House of Representatives to Senator Michael Bennet, and they were apparently talking about the Israel situation when a reporter walked by, and he said, he kind of leaned in, he said, I told him, Bibi, which is Netanyahu's nickname, and don't repeat this, he says, but you and I are going to have a come-to-Jesus meeting. And the reporter picked up on this. Yeah. And when a presidential aide spotted the camera and approached Biden to warn him, and the crowd included Anthony Blinken, they left the huddle, and basically Blinken said, I'm on a hot mic here. Good. That was good. Okay. So his comment hinted at his growing frustration with Benjamin Netanyahu over Israel's siege of Gaza. So, and sources actually recently told NBC News that Biden had privately referred to Netanyahu on another hot mic as an asshole. Pardon my language. Together, the remarks during his address and the hot mic moment paint a picture of growing frustration and a change of strategy by the Biden administration as pressure for ceasefire grows. As bodies pile up in Gaza and uncommitted, which is the political movement, I'll go into that in a minute, votes pile up in primary state after primary state, he appears that he has a problem that he really needs to fix, okay? So previous to the speech, the president had announced the establishment of a temporary port on Gaza's coast to allow aid to enter the territory via the sea. It's created by the American military. We're not waiting on the Israelis, a senior Biden administration official told reporters. 1 month ago, Biden described Israel's conduct in Gaza as over the top. So Democrat Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington, a very progressive critic of Biden's immerse to Israel, told reporters earlier on Thursday that she wanted to see the president call for a permanent ceasefire. She said, I think he's listening. I do see a shift in rhetoric, but I've yet to see a shift in policy, she said. The humanitarian catastrophe is so dire that I don't think a shift in rhetoric is sufficient anymore. So what we're looking at here is Joe Biden's biggest challenger right now for the 2024 Democratic nomination isn't a candidate. It's a call to action for immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza and for restricting U.S. military aid to Israel. And it's known by one word, uncommitted. Now, uncommitted is a new thing at the polls that originally was designed in Michigan, but it's spread to many, many, many other primaries, and thousands of votes have been cast on this. And what it is, uncommitted is a message sent to the Biden administration about Gaza. And it barely began a month ago, but it's gained a lot of momentum. Uncommitted, or its equivalent, has now won more than 370,000 votes in primaries and caucuses nationwide, picking up 20 delegates this summer's National Convention. Those numbers are going to rise, perhaps significantly, in the weeks to come. So that's a significant signal to the president. But what they're really saying is, if you don't change your positions, then we're going to write somebody else's name in here, and it's not going to be yours. The president, who gave unwavering support to Israeli Minister Netanyahu after the October 7th attacks, and did so even after the civilian death toll mounted after Israel retaliated. Now that 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, more than half of the women and children, he's speaking more frequently, just to the State of the Union address, about getting humanitarian aid for Gaza and trying to negotiate a temporary ceasefire. But that's seen as an insufficient response to what supporters of the burgeoning uncommitted movement identify as nothing less than genocide. So I'll leave it there for now. I mean, I have some takeaways from this story. The story is that Joe is in a really tough spot because, like I said, he cannot be the person that changes longstanding. We talked about Taiwan, and we have a policy. It's the same thing. You just can't reverse a policy that you've had in place, almost like a law in the books for all these years. And he's getting very frustrated because not only does I believe that he wants the genocide to stop, which we know, you and I both know it's not a genocide. We both know that Israel is required to hit civilian targets because Hamas has left them no choice. They hide civilians underneath military targets. It's something that everybody knows is going on, and people want them to basically just let Hamas give them a pass. And after all that's happened, let everything basically start over again. And we all know that Israel's not going to do that. They told us when this started that they were not going to stop until this was done. And the protests are still going on. You look at how far into the Ukraine war when it started, when people started getting back to their lives, they stopped changing their profile pictures on Facebook to Ukrainian flag and all that stuff. These protests in the streets for Palestine, they're still going on, okay? And Joe is really in the hot seat to do something about this. And he's going to have to deal with a guy who really wants to maintain the relationship that we have, and this is Netanyahu. But he's going to do what he thinks is best for his country, because as he said today, I am the leader of Israel. The people of Israel are counting on me to keep them safe. And if you want to go down that road, Joe's required to keep us safe, and he's not really doing that either. So, fire away, Steve.
That hot mic thing was unbelievable, and so how is he going to go to Netanyahu now and say anything to him?
Well, wait to see my second segment.
Well, that's what I'm going to wait for. That's why I'm kind of letting that fester in the air as I progress to my next. I know what you're up to. But anyway, good stuff. People, this is, again, pay attention. These two stories are basically what transpired in stuff to do with the State of the Union. So as you can see, there's a lot of dramatic stuff going on here and dynamic stuff. So, and we're going to continue here at the We Are Marshall podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X, Locals, Truth Social, and, of course, our channel on Rumble. And do support our sponsors, Local Prints, New Hampshire, out of Hampstead, New Hampshire, a screen printing business, full service, and MateConnector.com, an inexpensive dating website to help you get on your dating adventure to find the significant other. So we're going to go on right here with topic 3. And this now I've got is 5 takeaways from President Biden's State of the Union address. Now, President Biden didn't waste any time in his primetime State of the Union address drawing a sharp contrast with his likely 2024 presidential rival, former President Donald Trump. Instead of a policy-heavy laundry list speech, which is what they usually do, the president leaned into politics and at times shouted and amped up Democrats with some fiery rhetoric. Yes, rhetoric. Early in his speech, he derided Trump without mentioning his name, chastising those who failed to heed the threat from Russian President Vladimir Putin in Ukraine, and denouncing those who stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021. The atmosphere in the House chamber often seemed more like a political convention than the annual required speech assessing the State of the Union. So here's 5 takeaways that I've seen. So he took on Trump extensively on a wide range of policies. The president referred to policies or comments from my predecessor more than a dozen times, making it clear the high stakes televised speech was his campaign roadmap for his rematch with Trump in November. As Bill stated before, it was like a campaign speech. The president leaned into the issues that energized his base, like abortion and gun control and tax hikes on the wealthy. But he also attempted to challenge Republicans in the chamber and Trump outside of it on issues like the border and crime, areas where he faces skepticism from many independent and suburban voters. The president, who is 81, had a bar to clear to alleviate concerns from some of his own party about his age and capacity to hold the demanding job as commander in chief for 4 more years. He stuck mostly to his script, was energetic, and appeared to fire up Democrats in the chamber who occasionally chanted 4 more years and jumped to their feet cheering the president. Biden also worked to flip the age issue against his opponent, who at one point he referred to as some other people my age. Trump is 77. Reproductive rights are front and center in 2024 campaign. With 6 justices of the U.S. Supreme Court sitting in front rows, the president criticized the majority conservative court for overturning the landmark abortion case Roe v. Wade in 2022. As he warned, that history is watching how the U.S. handles alliances abroad and supports Ukraine. He warned about another assault on freedom, referring to Trump. Biden maintained that the former president was responsible for overturning the law and said, in fact, he brags about it. He warned that Republicans in Congress were pushing for a national abortion ban. He ticked through how a host of red states have restricted access to reproductive health services, warning that the latest law in Alabama that effectively banned in vitro fertilization. He mentioned Kate Cox, a guest sitting with the First Lady. Cox suffered a fatal fetal condition during her pregnancy, but was unable to obtain an abortion in Texas and sued the state. Biden warned that the GOP underestimated the power of women to mobilize, referencing past wins when reproductive freedom was on the ballot and predicting a win again in 2024. He also promised to restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land, something he will need a Democratic House and Senate to achieve, which is not likely after the 2024 election, when Republicans are favored to flip control of the Senate. The political symbolism of the power of women by Biden's campaign was also visibly on display in the chamber. Dozens of Democratic lawmakers donned white and sported buttons emblazoned with a slogan fighting for reproductive freedom. Also, Biden made the case for why his economic policies are working. Congressional Democrats, especially those in swing seats, needed Biden to alleviate voters' concern about his ability to do the job in his kickoff campaign speech. But that chiefly named the economy as the issue they wanted him to highlight. He argued that the state of the country was far worse when Trump was in office, citing the pandemic that triggered job losses, millions of deaths, and a mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. He acknowledged what many Democrats concede, that some of the major bills that Democrats passed since 2021 aren't fully felt around the country. It doesn't make the news, but in thousands of cities and towns, the American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told, he said. Many Republicans in the chamber groaned and booed at Biden's description of Trump's record. When Biden wasn't calling out Trump's record in the White House, he outlined his own. He pulled out statistics about real-world projects that are funded through the top legislative accomplishments, a health care and climate bill, which was passed without a single GOP vote, and the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Biden took credit for lowering prescription drugs and capping the cost of insulin for seniors on Medicare to $35 a month. He vowed in a second term to extend that cap for all who need insulin. Biden used a familiar populist line from the stump about shifting more cost savings to those on the lower income side at the expense of the top 1%. Biden cited Trump's 2017 tax cuts as the prime example of a president who was skewed toward helping the rich. He looked into the cameras to those watching at home and asked a political question designed to relate to most Americans. For folks at home, Does anybody really think the tax code is fair? Also, border security provoked a GOP response and blame game. Going into the State of the Union, the president and his advisors knew he needed to detail how he would address the situation at the U.S. Mexico border and acknowledge the impact it is having on not just in red border states, but in blue states across the country, where migrants are being bused and straining public resources. Public opinion polls consistently show it's his weakest issue politically, and Trump and Republicans on Capitol Hill have made it their top priority. Before the president's speech on Thursday, the House approved a bill dubbed the Laken-Riley Act, a reference to the 22-year-old Georgia nursing student who was murdered recently by a migrant who entered the U.S. illegally in 2022. The move was a deliberate attempt to force Democrats to go on the record on a measure that requires the detention of any migrant with a record of theft, and 37 Democrats, chiefly from swing districts, backed it. Republicans wore buttons that included Riley's name, and some chanted her name when President Biden called for Congress to pass the bipartisan Senate border security bill, which White House officials helped broker over several months. The Senate approved the legislation with a significant bipartisan vote. But House Speaker Mike Johnson said it was dead on arrival and declined to take it up. Biden again didn't mention Trump by name, but blamed him for derailing it. I'm told my predecessor called Republicans in Congress and demanded they block the bill. He feels it would be a political win for me and a political loser for him. Biden repeated a challenge he issued in a recent trip to the southwest border for Trump to join him to help pass the bill. He mentioned he was looking at executive authority for policies that reduce the number of migrants, something that has split Democrats on Capitol Hill. But he also said he needed Congress to change the law to fund more enforcement personnel. The blame game over which party is more serious about the situation at the border is expected to be a leading theme through fall. Although Democrats are split on the president's embrace of some conservative policies, like altering who can be eligible to claim asylum, the strategy of trying to flip the script and put Republicans on defense for blocking a bipartisan plan is one candidates in competitive races are expected to replicate. And finally, Biden addressed critics on his Mideast policy, stepped up criticism of Israeli leaders. President Biden made Israel's now 5 months long war against Hamas in Gaza a significant part of his speech, and he acknowledged families of those still being held by Hamas in the chamber's visitors galleries. His handling of the war has angered many progressives and younger voters who argue that the president isn't tough enough on the Israeli government. The fallout from his approach has cost him politically, and Democrats are concerned it could prompt some voters to stay home in the fall. In Michigan, a significant bloc of Democrats, upset about the president's handling of Israel's war in Gaza, sent a message in the primary last week with more than 100,000 registering a vote for the uncommitted option on the ballot instead of for Biden. A number of Super Tuesday states had similar efforts. Now, as you can see, there was a lot in the State of the Union. Many of it, like Bill said, needed to be fact-checked and is not correct. And he wants to put blame on the previous administration and nothing on his. Now, Bill did go over a few of things like that. Like, how can you blame the previous administration when you've had 3 years in office already? You're into your 4th year, and you're blaming someone 4 years behind you. It's at this point.
Old. That's what it is.
Yeah, at this point, you can't do it. You're done there. Everything going on is what Joe Biden has put into place. And he can sit there and give Trump a hard time. Everybody that watches this podcast knows I'm not a fan of there. And Trump got hit with one of the largest things to ever affect this country in the history of this country. And that's got to be noted, that even with that, I believe the spending that Trump did to try to curtail that is still less than what Biden has spent after the fact. So to sit here and say the State of the Union is good is my big issue that I'd said in my first segment. You can't give someone that is in charge of the country to tell you that the country's going well. They're not going to sit up there
What's
and
he going to say?
Yeah,
I suck.
Everything's going well. Exactly. He's never going to say he's, but he should. But go ahead, Bill. What do you have to say about this?
Well, that was very well done, Steve. Thank you. Well, we're just going to look at some of these things here. Taking on Trump was a bad idea because the more you mention your enemy, the more it's on the forefront of everybody's minds, right?
Yep.
And everybody knows what Donald Trump stands for. That's why people crack me up and they say, I'm not know who I'm going to vote for. Well, these two people have completely opposite, bipolar ideas for this country. How can you not know which one you're going to vote for? It kills
Exactly.
me. Stay home, please. That's the person that needs to take the night off on election day.
Yep.
Because I think the biggest problem this country has is besides an inept government is stupid voters. Reproductive rights, it's a big issue. It is because I think one of the things that probably saved some of the Republicans' ability to get things done is getting Roe versus Wade overturned. I don't have a whole lot of strong feeling either way about it. I tend to leave women's rights issues alone. I don't look at them as a political issue. But the court, obviously, the Republicans that Trump put on the Supreme Court, which is the reason I voted for Donald Trump, is what he would do with the Supreme Court, led to the ultimate overturn of the Roe versus Wade. But reproductive rights, I kind of stay away from it. I just don't feel like it's my business.
I have to disagree with you so vehemently. That's
okay.
Eradicate. You can't have reproductive rights with a female and a male. You need both. And with this whole point, they're eradicating the male, saying the male has no reproductive rights. That's where
that is one aspect of the issue. It's the whole reproductive rights is a very broad issue. I guess I'd have to say that when people put in place positions where you can have an abortion at moment of birth, I'll say something needs to be done about that.
Yes,
but other than that, like I said, I don't not care about it, but I don't really get too vocal about it. As far as Ukraine is concerned, he's got some questions to answer on that one. Mainly, we're going to continue to support Ukraine as it becomes increasingly likely that they're not going to succeed in their opposition to Russia. We need to be looking at what's going to happen should it happen. Israel, we talked plenty about, but a very unpopular campaign among the whole country that could be what undoes him. His economic policies, he should have left that out, because his economy, unless you are literally living in a bubble or you're so rich it doesn't affect you, the economy is a disaster for average Americans, and they need to vote their wallet when it comes time, because the Trump economy, I'm sorry, it was excellent. People can tell me all you want, it wasn't. It was. Prices were down, manufacturing jobs were up, gas was manageable. The economy was good, okay? The stock market was excellent. Maybe we robbed Peter to pay Paul a little bit with accruing some additional deficit spending. I get that. But, a good economy defines a good president. And the border, does everybody not remember when Joe sat down with a mountain of leather binders on his first day, and everything that Trump had done, he just signed off on revoking it? Well, one of them was border policy, okay? Trump had 95% reduction in border crossings while he was president. That's a concrete number. That's a real thing. He had real policies. He put it on Mexico. He changed the process of applying for asylum, where you can't do it in the United States, or do it outside the United States and then come in. I can't believe that people can actually say that the border policies are Trump's policies, because it wasn't. He had it fixed, almost absolutely fixed. And I don't know. The rest of it is just fact checking. You just got to ask yourself, do I agree with that? You look around your house and you see where you are, and you look at your bank account, and you look how you're struggling in what areas, and you got to determine your perception of what the State of the Union really is. But your takeaways were perfect. And it's done. I mean, there is people who are raving about how great the speech was, and I'm kind of slapping my forehead, because.
But the only people that are raving about how good it was are left talking heads.
People who are hoping that put an end to the age issue by him acting vibrant and coherent for one night. Things like that. It's not going to end the age conversations.
No, because they're going to see him after that. They're going to still see things go on. They can see that, for one night, for 58 minutes or so, the guy did deliver a speech and came through. But other than that, he's not leading the country in the right direction. No. We both pointed out a number of factors that are stating that. The CHIPS Act, I'll be all over. I will praise him on that. That's probably to me the best thing that he's done while he's been in office, in my opinion.
And things he's done, I will never take away from him. Absolutely.
Nope. Nope, we will give credit where credit is due. But here at the We Are Marshall podcast, we're pretty much at the end of doing anything about the State of the Union. Bill's got a couple segments going forward. I'll assist him to get him going. So just go check out our social media, like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any questions in regards to any issues here, you can reach me, Steve, at wearemarshallpodcast.com. And you can reach Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com. Bill's going to jump into his next issue in regards to Israel and a couple of things going on there. Go right ahead, Bill.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Let's talk about my second story, which is the reaction by Israel, and particularly by Bibi Netanyahu, to both Biden's comments during the State of the Union address and then the hot mic issue in which he made a comment about a Jewish person meeting Jesus, which is kind of funny. And his response, of course, to that he said, well, he may have been born near here, but I don't really know what that means. It's kind of funny. So I love that. But Biden presses Netanyahu on Gaza at the hot mic moment. So when it was apparent that it was out, and it looks to me like it may have been planned, it's out there, and you knew there's going to be some kind of discussion going forward, and it didn't take much long for it to happen. Joe Biden said on Friday that Netanyahu must allow more aid into Gaza after he was caught on a hot mic saying he would confront the Israeli premier over the conflict. He was overheard saying after his State of the Union speech that he had told Netanyahu that they would have a come to Jesus meeting, reflecting his growing frustration with Israel and directly challenging, for the most part, what he feels is Netanyahu's handling of the matter. Yes, he does, Biden told reporters when asked about the comment. In the wake of the recorded comments, if Netanyahu needed to do more to let in relief to the Palestinian territory among UN warnings of looming famine. Asked by reporters why he had said a meeting was necessary, Biden said, I didn't say that in the speech. You guys were eavesdropping on things. So Biden faces acute political pressure at home over his steadfast support, again, standing U.S. policy, support for Israel's war on Hamas, but has been shifting his position on the need to reduce casualties and tackle the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That's a legitimate concern, okay? The hot mic comments after the State of the Union speech reinforced the impression of a growing rift with Netanyahu as Israel and Hamas failed to agree to a ceasefire. Now, driving the increased tensions is that Netanyahu has ordered the military to prepare a plan for evacuating civilians from the southern Gaza city of Rafah ahead of an anticipated Israeli invasion. And this decision has sparked international attention, with Biden expressing concern and humanitarian organizations very closely monitoring the situation. But Netanyahu's commitment to invade Rafah has drawn attention to its potential impact upon civilians, which is the key point of the opposition to the war right now. Here are some key points. Rafah is a densely populated city in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, near the Egyptian border. Many of the residents are already displaced people who were living in other areas of Gaza that are now destroyed by war. They're living in tents. The evacuation plan, he's instructed military and security officials to submit a combined plan for evacuating the population and destroying Hamas battalions in Rafah. Because it makes sense that Hamas will be hiding among those people. It does. So he emphasized that achieving the war's goal requires eliminating Hamas and wherever they are, and ensuring civilians evacuate combat areas. The international concerns are the U.S. has warned that an invasion of Rafah would be a disaster. The EU and the United Nations have also expressed concern about potential humanitarian consequences. Humanitarian nightmare, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres described the situation as a humanitarian nightmare as it is, emphasizing the need to protect civilians while avoiding forced mass displacement. And then you have Netanyahu's defiance. He's steadfast. He says, we will go there. We're not going to leave. He aims to prevent a recurrence of past events like October 7th, and he wants, again, total victory. So the frustration is that he warned us, this is not going to be fast. It's not going to be simple. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard on everybody involved. We are going to finally eradicate our existential threat, and that's what he's doing. So as negotiations between Israel and Hamas remain on hold, the fate of the civilians of Rafah really hangs in the balance. But Biden's apparent shift in policy, his messaging is still inconsistent. He went on MSNBC on Saturday, and he said that Israel's threatened invasion of Rafah in northern Gaza would be his red line for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But then he backtracked. So he went from Reagan in the 80s to Gaddafi, that's my line of death, to all said, no, there's actually no red line, and I'm never going to not support Israel. So he rendered himself completely impotent with that one statement. So in a somewhat contradictory exchange with his interviewer on MSNBC, he said they cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead as a consequence of going after Hamas militants. So Biden and his aides have urged Netanyahu in strong terms not to launch a major offensive until Israel crafts a plan for mass evacuation, which they are doing, of civilians from the last area of Gaza. They said they're doing it. I don't know why he even bothered saying this. And it's not invaded yet with ground forces. So more than half of Gaza's 2.3 million people are sheltering in that tiny area of Rafah. So Joe said there's other ways to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas, Biden said, referring to the Islamist group's October 7th rampage. And asked whether an Israeli invasion of Rafah would be a red line for him with Netanyahu. And asked them to really repeat. They want to make sure they got it right. Biden again said, it's a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical, so there is no red line in which I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them.
Then why say it?
Exactly. It's a total walk back. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And if anybody who knows how to interpret signals, that's as wishy-washy as it gets,
Big
so
time.
Biden insisted that Netanyahu must pay more attention to innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He reiterated his call for a 6-week ceasefire for hostage releases and aid delivery, though negotiations have stalled, and Hamas has never suggested they would release the hostages. It's all they have, right? So as whether a ceasefire could still be reached before the Ramadan, which began on March 10th, Biden said, I think it's possible. I'll never give up on that. But here comes the rebuttal. Bibi came on Fox and Friends this morning. I happened to catch it. It was something else. He went on live, and he said he pushed back against Biden's criticism of his handling of the war. He said he reacted to the hot mic moment on the floor and on the red line comment. He said he agreed with Biden about protecting innocent civilians, but he would keep fighting Hamas until the end, despite the president's and the world's concerns. He said you have to ask him what he said, because he said he agrees that we have to destroy Hamas. That's what we intend to do. Look, it's either Israel or Hamas. There's no middle way. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
He told Fox News co-host Brian Kilmeade, there's no room for compromise. They both want 100% eradication. So he said, we have to have that victory. We can't have 3/4 of a victory. We can't have 2/3, because Hamas will reconstitute itself with these 4 battalions of Rafah, reconquer the Gaza Strip, and do October 7th over and over and over again. And for us, for Israel, not for me, for the people of Israel, that's a red line. We cannot let Hamas survive. So Lawrence Jones asked Netanyahu, really, I love how he did this. It was very blatant. Lawrence Jones asked Netanyahu right out, if your red line comments, if Biden's red line comments or calls for a ceasefire had fractured the U.S. relationship with Israel, and if the country was being pressured to pull back its attacks on Hamas. And Netanyahu said, I am not getting off the gas. The U.S. and Israel had disagreements over how to defeat Hamas, he explained, but as Israel's leader, his first priority was protecting his country's security and future. Write that down, Joe. Moreover, the war was supported by the majority of Americans, he argued. I watched this. Netanyahu said, he goes, 80% of your people, American people, support what I'm doing except for your president, he said. Because when asked specifically about Biden's hot mic moment about having to come to Jesus, he said, I'm not familiar with the phrase, but I can tell you if it means having a heart-to-heart conversation, we've had that plenty of times over the 40 years that I've known Joe Biden, and over the 12 or 13 conversations we've had since the beginning of this war. But ultimately, I am the prime minister. I'm responsible for the future and security of the Jewish state, and I'm supported in my policies by my people. So Kayleigh McEnany asked if Biden's public criticism of Netanyahu had disrupted ceasefire negotiations, and Netanyahu said that unity between the two nations was crucial and would help expedite Israel's victory over Hamas. Canned party line. Well, look, to the extent that the world thinks that America and Israel are united, that helps the war effort and helps our effort to achieve victory. And obviously the release of the hostages, to the extent Hamas believes that there's daylight between us, that doesn't help, he responded. So he said, I appreciate the support that Biden administration have given us at the beginning of the war. I hope it will continue, because victory is at hand. It will come as soon as I think it will come sooner, the more united we are, not divided, or at least not given the appearance of division. So pretty strong response, if you will. He basically said that you're going against the wishes of not only my people, but your people. And he reiterated what he said before,
Because it's political. He's just pandering to the people that are supporting the Palestinian cause. Okay, everybody, again, they got to separate the situation. No one wants to hurt the Palestinian people. If we could get them out of the way and get rid of Hamas, everything would be fine. But a couple of questions I have about stuff that's in there. Biden said there are other solutions other than what he's doing. What solutions did he offer?
They weren't offered.
So he just said that.
He just said it. He did. There was nothing.
Everything's solved now. Yep, I got you. Okay, I got you. Unbelievable. This is
up
what
to us to find them, Steve. It's up to us to find them.
Okay, and what other ways do they get Hamas? Period. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
If there was a way, they would have found it already.
They're hiding amongst civilians and stuff. There's nothing really that you can do. You've got to kill these people. They don't care. I am completely baffled at the response from our country to his. And the one thing that I like that you reiterated strongly in there is Netanyahu states that the security of his country is his number one concern. And you did state out there, and people probably didn't catch it, Joe Biden, you should take notes on that because that's the number one cause that should be going on here. But good stuff, Bill. Well, we want to go right to your segment here that we always learn something from. If you got something more to interject on the last one, go ahead and then jump right into this day.
I was just going to say that the controversial point of his night, which he had to avoid until he couldn't any longer, was when Marjorie Taylor Greene said, say her name. Well, the immigration issue that she's talking about is an innocent American civilian being killed by an illegal alien who crossed the border through a policy of the sitting president whose responsibility is protection of his citizens. So that this proves Netanyahu's point. That's all I was going to say.
Okay, and let's jump right into this day in history on the We Are Marshall podcast.
This day in history in 2011 was the Fukushima nuclear disaster. This was a horrible story. It still is, right? Yeah.
Yep. Still causing problems.
So we have 2011, which is 13 years ago. Wow. The largest earthquake ever recorded in Japan causes massive devastation, and a tsunami decimates the Tohoku region of northeastern Honshu. On top of the already horrific destruction and loss of life, the natural disaster gave rise to a nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. The disaster is considered the second worst nuclear disaster in history, forcing the relocation of over 100,000 people. I would imagine that Chernobyl was the worst. During the emergency, each of the three operational nuclear reactors at the plant shut down successfully, but the backup power and cooling systems failed. And as a result, residual heat caused fuel rods in all the reactors to partially melt down. As crews searched the rubble for survivors and the nation reeled from the earthquake and ensuing tsunami, the nuclear disaster unfolded over the course of several days. The facilities where reactors 1 and 3 were located exploded on March 12th and March 14th, respectively, prompting the government to evacuate everyone within a 20-kilometer radius. Another explosion in the building housing Reactor 2 on March 15th released even more radiation, and thousands of people left their homes as workers used helicopters, water cannons, and seawater pumps to try to cool the overheating facility. So the full extent of the fallout became apparent over the ensuing months, with the government eventually evacuating all residents within a 30-kilometer radius of the plant. No deaths were initially attributed to the incident, although there was little comfort to the 154,000 people who were evacuated or the loved ones of the more than 18,000 people who lost their life in the tsunami and the earthquake. Some have suggested that such a large evacuation was not necessary, as radiation levels appear to have dropped below what was expected in the immediate wake of the accident. And though many were able to return to their homes, a 371 square kilometer difficult-to-return zone wow. Talk about politically correct wording. Difficult to return zone remains, maybe that's lost in translation, remains evacuated as of 2001 when this article was written, so 2021. So it's still this way in 2024. And we did a story not too long ago about what Fukushima was doing with the millions of gallons of contaminated water, which is they're releasing it into the ocean. And they're counting on mass dissipation and natural factors to to eradicate the radiation from the spent
It's
material.
gone so far as to affect the California coast.
Yeah, that's a lot of ground to cover.
That is a lot of ground to cover, but good
So it's a big
story.
story. Yeah.
Many people probably don't even remember it, and I'm kind of surprised that was 13 years ago. That's
I
amazing.
know. Doesn't seem it.
But good stuff out there, people. Hope you learned something on that. That disaster was a mess completely. They did save it from doing a Chernobyl type event, but it was on the water, so it became probably a good chance it may be deadlier in the long run than Chernobyl, Bill.
Yeah.
But we're at the end of the podcast. Every time we get to the end of the podcast, we always end it with a good story, good news. We've given you a lot of heavy news, so let's end it with good news, usually a human interest story, technological breakthrough, or a healthcare breakthrough. And today, I found something that's kind of a technological breakthrough, but it's also something I like to put out there because everybody thinks the world is going to end because of climate change and we're not cleaning things up. But this is just another one of the stories I put out there to show you that we do have a lot of people that are working on ingenuity that is going to make this planet a lot safer and less wasteful. So, shape-shifting fiber produces fabrics that shrink or expand in real time and fit into existing manufacturing. Imagine if the same forces that shrink your wool sweater when you forget what water temp to wash it in could be used at will to decide the fit of your own clothes in real time. This is the aim of a project at MIT looking to make shape-shifting fabrics for everything from medical devices to everyday clothes to utility tools like tarps and nets. The project has produced the prototype of a programmable actuating fiber that's called Fibrobo. The fiber contracts in response to an increase in temperature and then self-reverses when the temperature decreases. Without any embedded sensors or other hard components, we use textiles for everything. We make planes with fiber-reinforced composites. We cover the International Space Station with a radiation shielding fabric. We use them for personal expression and performance wear, says Jack Foreman, a graduate student in the Intangible Media Group of the MIT Media Lab. With a secondary affiliation at the Center for Bits and Atoms and lead author of a paper on the actuating fiber. So much of our environment is adaptive and responsive, but the one thing that needs to be the most adaptive and responsive, textiles, is completely inert. Joined on the paper by 11 other researchers at MIT and Northeastern University, they present together the findings of their initiative to develop a fiber that could silently change shape and be compatible with existing textile manufacturing methods. They developed a material called liquid crystal elastomer and then invented a machine that squirts this material out like a hot glue gun into a chamber where it's bathed in UV light to solidify it. Spooled up at the top of the machine, Foreman and his team can produce a little more than half a mile of fiber per day that fits the specifications for tensile strength, fineness, and durability that allows it to be used with weaving looms, embroidery tools, and industrial knitting machines. MIT Press explains that by carefully mixing chemicals to synthesize the LCE, the researchers can control the final properties of the fiber, such as its thickness or the temperature at which it actuates. More innovative fabrics, MIT scientists developed the perfect breathable earth-friendly fabric using the same material as these. They perfected a preparation technique that creates LCE fiber, which can actuate at skin-safe temperatures, making it suitable for wearing fabrics. At the end of the day, you don't want a diva fiber. You want a fiber that, when you are working with it, falls into the ensemble of materials, one that you can work with just like any other fiber material, but then it has a lot of exciting new capabilities, Foreman said. So this stuff right here, it's not recyclable in its current form, but most clothes end up in landfills because they don't fit or they're unwanted. A shape-changing fabric could solve those two issues at least, and in any case, products made with Fibrobo would probably cost enough to dissuade simply throwing it away when you've had enough of it. Valid point. But good stuff here to show that they're working on a fabric. I mean, how many textiles are in landfills, in oceans all over the world? This is another one of those projects where they're trying to eradicate the waste, the disposal, and to, get more use out of things that we do use. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but what are you thinking of this?
I haven't, but I think that the one thing that probably offends me as far as pollution more than anything is our throwaway mentality, I come from an era, as do you, when we had cobblers. We had people who fixed our shoes. Now we just get rid of them, When we had electronics, we would give them to somebody else when we were done with them. Now they end up in landmarks. We go buy a bigger TV and throw away a perfectly good one.
Yep.
Anything that we can develop that will allow us to be less of a landfill nation, landfill society, and more of a, hey, let's find something that we can actually reuse. It's going to yield nothing but good results, and maybe even create good habits. I think it's a great idea, and I guess the only concern I would have is affordability. It would probably take a while for something like that. Have
like the final line I stated, it might be overpriced to not throw it away, but like everything, some things start very expensive, and once they come down with utilization, it's a good thing. So it's a good technology. I like the fact that we're bringing stories to people where it shows we are making progress in many areas of climate change, pollution, and any of that same recycling.
We both learned a lot. We really have doing this stuff.
Absolutely. So that's the end of the podcast. We appreciate everybody coming out here to watch. We'd love it once again if you would like and share everything on all of our episodes off of our social media on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, Twitter, X, Truth Social, and of course our channel on Rumble. Rumble is a free application to download, and just type in the search the We Are Marshall podcast. That will give you access to both seasons of this podcast. We've got a season 1 with 60-something episodes, and we're on our 15th episode of this one. You can also reach me, Steve, at We Are Marshall Podcast, if you have any questions or issues. And you can reach Bill at We Are Marshall Podcast. .com. And bottom line here is, if we'd love it for you to go to the channel, like I said, on Rumble. Please follow and subscribe there so you get notification of the new content as we release it. And also go follow our website, www.wearemarshallpodcast.com. On there, you can see a multitude of things. Under near Bill's bio, there is a ability to click to go to his blogs and read all of those. There's a multitude of them on many subjects. And also go to Amazon and check out his Vela episodic short stories, some interesting stuff there that he is writing. Go on our website at wearemarshallpodcast.com. You can get access to Amazon and buy my first published novel, The Unforeseen Enemy, and my second one that's on there, The Perception Therapist. Also, we'd love it if you would sponsor, support our sponsors. We've got Local Prints, New Hampshire, a full-scale screen printing business out of Hampstead, New Hampshire. You can click on our website. On the top left of the website, there's a link to go right to them. Check them out. Go give them a try. Give them some support. See what they can do for you. And also check out our large sponsor, MateConnector.com, a large dating website with all of the features of the big players in the dating website market, but for a much more inexpensive price. So we here at Marshall, We Are Marshall podcast. This is the end of the podcast. We appreciate you all coming out and listening. Do support us and our sponsors, and everyone have a good evening. We'll be back again soon. Thank you.